Greetings to all peoples and kingdoms of Arda, and welcome to Shield Maidens of Arda. Eärendil, the morning star, the Merino, the blessed, bright, the Halfelven, is one of the most fascinating characters Tolkien ever created. His story, life, and deeds are also rich in metaphor and meaning. While many people see Frodo, Aragorn, or Gandalf as the ultimate Christ figure in Tolkien's world, I think we will see that the character of Eärendil presents some of the most poignant and powerful Christ-like images in the whole of Tolkien's legendarium. We're going to explore this theory today, as well as explore the life of Eärendil in general, giving us a deeper understanding and appreciation of how Tolkien crafts such multi-dimensional characters in his world. It's important to remember, however, that even if Eärendil displays many Christ-like attributes, he's not meant to match Christ's life in every way, and there will be distinct differences between the two. There is still much to be enjoyed and gathered from such a study, so I invite you to sit back and let this shield maiden be your guide into the wonderful world of Middle-earth. Eärendil was born the son of the human man Tor and the elvish princess Eärendil. His birth came about because Tor had been traveling to the city of Gondolin to relay a message of warning to Aragorn, Elven king of the city, from Ormo, the lord of the waters. The message was a warning for all the city, that the time had come for Aragorn to move his people to the havens of Silmarillion, in preparation for great disasters about to befall the land. Although Aragorn chose not to heed this warning, he allowed Tor to stay in the city of Gondolin, and there Tor fell in love with and wedded Aragorn's daughter, the Princess Eärendil. Eärendil, then, was a child born of both men and elves. He was one of the half-elven. This special lineage was of utmost importance to him later on in his life, and indeed, it is because of that lineage that he was given the opportunity to save his people, and indeed, all of Arda. Eärendil lived a happy life with his parents in the hidden city of Gondolin until he was 7 years old. In that year, 510 of the First Age, the city of Gondolin fell by the hands of an elf of the city by the name of Maeglin. Maeglin hated Tor and desired Eärendil for himself, and for promises of her hand he revealed to Morgoth the exact location of the city and how the Dark Lord might overcome it. Therefore, when Eärendil was but only a child, 7 years of age, his happy home was torn apart by rage and jealousy, and he himself very nearly lost his life. In the wake of fire and battle and death, both Eärendil and his mother Eärendil were physically threatened by Maeglin, as in a burst of rage and jealousy, the elf tried to drag Eärendil away, then grabbed Eärendil and made to cast him over the city wall. Tor appeared to save both his wife and child, and Maeglin fell to his death below. Tor and his little family were then forced to flee the city as it fell into flame and ruin. Here we can see our first reference to Jesus. For any who seek to find images of Christ within the character of Eärendil, they could very well begin with this: Jesus' flight from his hometown into exile. Just as Jesus was forced to flee Nazareth with his parents, Mary and Joseph, trying to escape the jealous King Herod who sought his life, so it was with Eärendil. The three joined a group of fugitives making the way from Gondolin to Silmarillion. They were confronted by a Balrog, sent by Morgoth, no doubt, in a last effort to decimate Gondolin's people. By the valor of Glorfindel, the Balrog was slain, although Glorfindel lost his life in the process. The mourning remnant found a haven with Círdan and Silmarillion, and there began a new life. It must have been tragic for young Eärendil. For 7 years he had lived a happy, peaceful life in a city free from shadows and darkness. For 7 years his entire world was walls of white stone and royal grandeur and pleasant gardens. For 7 years he likely never knew or thought that there was a world outside his own. That had all changed in one horrible day. The havens of Silmarillion were most likely a soothing balm to the child's upended life. Both father and son had heard the call of the sea, while a Nan Tothrin donned their flight from Gondolin, and it seems that Eärendil's father spent much of his days consumed by this sea longing and his desire to sail far afield. Perhaps because of the constant wandering of his father, Eärendil grew to become the leader of the people who dwelt in Silmarillion, and it was also there that he met and married Elwing, granddaughter of the famed Baron and Luthien. Like himself, Elwing had come to the havens of Silmarillion to escape war and destruction. Like Eärendil, she knew loss and pain and sorrow. Like him, she, too, was the child of a union of man and elf, mortal and immortal. Eärendil and Elwing were wedded there at the havens and had 2 children, Aragorn and Eros. In this new world that Eärendil found himself within, he discovered something else as well, the friendship of Círdan the shipwright, lord of the havens. It was from Círdan that he learned the art of shipbuilding, and alongside Círdan he built the ship Vingalot, whose name meant foam flower in Quenya. And as they built the ship and looked upon its splendor and its beauty, Círdan recalled a vision he had had regarding the ship, and understood that Vingalot was fulfillment of that vision. Indeed, as Círdan and Eärendil grew closer in friendship and understanding, Círdan no doubt began to see that much of Eärendil's life was a fulfillment of prophecy. Eärendil himself had been born in a fulfillment of words spoken by his own grandfather to Tolkien, the elven king of Gandalf. For in the midst of a raging battle, when all hope seemed lost, and Hor, father of Tor, was striving to hold back the forces of Morgoth, he spoke thus to Tolkien: "This I say to you, Lord, with the eyes of death, though we part here forever, and I shall not look on your white walls again, from you and from me a new star shall arise. Farewell." Eärendil's entire life, therefore, was the fulfillment of prophecy. He was born to bring hope and light to the peoples of Middle-earth, and even the horrible event of the fall of Gandalf was so that he might grow up beside the sea, under the shadow of Círdan, wed the half-elven maiden Elwing, and give birth to the twins Aragorn and Eros. This was, too, so that his hand might have a part in the making of Vingalot, the ship that would help to secure the fate and future of all peoples of Arda. In this way we can again see how Eärendil is a mirror of Jesus Christ. During his lifetime, it is said that Jesus fulfilled over 300 prophecies, ultimately to lead to our salvation, and the salvation of the whole world, even as we shall see with Eärendil. When at last the ship Vingalot was finished, it was considered the most beautiful vessel ever made. Tolkien says of it that it was the fairest of the ships of song, golden were as oars, and white as timbers, hewn in the birchwoods of Nimberthil, and the sails were as the argent moon. Eärendil had built the ship for a twofold purpose: to seek out his father and mother, Tor and Eärendil, who had sailed away of their own into the sunset and never returned, and to find the last shore, Valinor, the home of the Valar themselves. For the sorrows of the people of Middle-earth lay heavy on him, and he wanted to lay before the lords of the West the suffering of his people, and hoped to move them to pity. Indeed, of all people, elves or men, Eärendil was the only being who might be capable of such a task. He had lived through much, he had suffered much, he understood the plight of both immortal and mortal beings, since the blood of both ran in his veins. It might be said of him as it was said of Jesus: he was a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. So Eärendil set sail. He did not find Tor and Eärendil, nor did he come to the shores of Valinor, for it was not yet his time. Tolkien says he was defeated by shadows and enchantments, driven by repelling winds. He missed his wife and sons, and so returned back towards his home, intending to go to them. Yet again, fate stepped forward to present its cruel hand, for Eärendil was never to see his sons again. In his absence, the havens of Silmarillion were attacked by 4 of the sons of Fëanor. The brothels were on an endless quest to reacquire the Silmarils, jewels of power and beauty that their father had crafted. Over the years, their desperate attempts to recover them had led them to kill and attack their own kin. Elwing's flight from her homeland was on account of the vengeful brothers, and now they had discovered her hiding place and once again sought to reclaim the Silmaril at the cost of elven lives. For Elwing was in possession of the Silmarillion, having been granted it by her father Baron, who had, in turn, rescued it from the hands of the Dark Lord Morgoth. The Silmarillion was thought to bring peace and healing and light to the realm it dwelt in, and it was therefore not a light thing to surrender. Indeed, Elwing refused to do so, even with the threat of her own sons falling into the hands of the Fëanorians, even with the havens burning and his people being slaughtered. Elwing chose to throw herself from a cliff into the water instead of allowing the jewel to be reclaimed. She did not perish, for the Veil of the Sea, Ormo, transformed her into a white bird, and she was able to seek out and be reunited with her husband. This is one part of Eärendil's history that had always disturbed me. Why would any mother willingly abandon her children to the merciless hands of the enemies, all for a jewel? It is a hard question, and there may be no true and reassuring answer. Doing a quick search on the subject reveals many theories. Some suggestions were that Elwing chose to sacrifice herself in the gem in the hopes of ending forever the curse of the Silmarils. Other suggestions are that Elwing herself was a being weighted with sorrow and traumatic memories from her own childhood. She was forced to flee the sons of Fëanor. Her own brothers had been lost in the woods, her family murdered, and her home destroyed. This particular theory pointed out that Elwing may have suffered from PTSD, and therefore acted unthinkingly in a desperate, frantic desire to escape the hands of the Fëanorians once again. There is much that can be said about these theories, but there was no time to cover them in this video. My own contribution would be that both Elwing and Eärendil were children of royal blood. Kings and lords were often forced to sacrifice their own families and loved ones at the expense of the kingdom as a whole. This may have been part of her mindset when she flung herself into the ocean. For the greater good of the peoples in Kingdom Plevada, the Silmaril must essentially be lost to the world. The curse attached to it would then be ended, and the slaying of kin by kin would no longer be a threat. Setting aside these theories and musings, the story of Eärendil continues. The mariner was making his way back to his home, troubled by fearful dreams. One night, as he hastened home, a white bird fell upon the deck of Vingalot, in a swoon, nigh unto death with the urgency of her speed, for it was Elwing. He took her into the ship, her true form hidden in the dark of the night. It was the morning light Eärendil saw who it was that had come to him, and together they sorrowed over the ruin of their home and the loss of their sons. Happily for Aragorn and Eros, their story did not end with the attack upon their homes. The twin brothers were surprisingly adopted by the sons of Fëanor and were well taken care of. It is not known if Eärendil and Elwing were ever aware of this, for their journey had diverged a new path. The Silmarillion paints this most important portion of Eärendil's life in such beautiful, poetic terms that you must forgive me if I quote liberally from it. Yet Eärendil saw now no hope left in the land of Middle-earth, and he turned again in despair and came not home, but sought back once more to Valinor with Elwing at his side. He stood now most often at the prow of Vingalot, and the Silmaril was bound upon his brow, and ever his light grew greater as they drew into the west. And the wise have said that it was by reason of the power of that holy jewel that they came in time to waters that no vessel save those of the Teleri had known. And they came to the enchanted isles and escaped their enchantment, and they came into the shadowy seas and passed their shadows, and they looked upon Tor Oresia, the lonely isle, but tarried not. This passage in itself contains a wealth of insight. The Silmaril is here referred to as a holy jewel. It is a light, growing ever stronger and more bright as it nears the place of its origin. The light protects and enables Eärendil to pass enchantment, shadows, and danger unharmed. If we see Eärendil as a prototype of Jesus, this voyage might be likened to the 3 days between Jesus' death and his resurrection, in such verses as, "Whom God hath raised up, having loosed the pains of death, because it was not possible that he should be holden of it." Death, shadows, danger. Nothing could prevent Jesus from entering into the glory of his Father, and with the holy light at his brow, nothing could now stop Eärendil from entering the glories of Valinor, the Undying Lands. Yet the dangers were not over. It was considered death for mortal man to set foot on the shores of Eärendil. Yet, as Eärendil told his 2 companions and his wife, that peril I will take on myself alone for the sake of the 2 kindreds. Then he proceeded to walk among the green grass and the light and the dust of the diamonds. At first, all was empty, and he was sorrowful, for he thought that evil had overtaken Valinor as well. And then he heard a voice. Hail, Eärendil, of Morinor's most renowned, the looked for that cometh at unawares, the longed for that cometh beyond hope. Hail, Eärendil, bearer of the light before the sun and moon, splendor of the children of earth, star in the darkness, jewel in the sunset, radiant in the morning. This beautiful piece of poetic utterance finds its inspiration from an Old English poem titled Christ. One section of the poem, describing the advent of Christ, reads thus. Hail, Eärendil, brightest of angels, sent to men over Middle-earth, in true radiance of the sun, fine beyond stars you always illuminate, from yourself every season. These lines were what inspired Tolkien to write the story of Eärendil to begin with. It is no wonder that Eärendil shines as a beacon of light, as a Christ figure, as a morning star. The voice that welcomed Eärendil to Valinor and spoke these words was that of Eärnwy, the herald of Manwë, who then brought Eärendil to stand before all the Valar in the halls of Valinor, and there he pleaded for mercy and pity towards men and elves, and his prayer was granted. Yet there were great choices laid upon the Valar, for no mortal man had ever dared to set foot on the shores of the Blessed Realm, and some of the Valar wondered if Eärendil should be allowed to live. Ormo, ever patient and merciful towards mankind, spoke against such a course of action, and his reply is strangely akin to what was spoken about Jesus. For this he was born into the world. If Eärendil had been a mere man, if he had been only an elf, if he had come to the shores of Valinor seeking mercy and help for one of the kindreds only, it is doubtful that his errand would have succeeded. But he was not, and he did not. He carried the blood of both mortal men and an immortal elf in his veins. He came before the powers with humility and love towards all people, and it was that love that brought about salvation for all of Arda. In the same way, Jesus, both fully man and fully God, was the only one capable of paying the debt that we incurred by our transgressions. By his love and his sacrifice on the cross, we were given salvation, eternal life, and hope. Mercy and aid for the peoples of Middle-earth had been granted, and Eärendil and Elwing were now given a decision to make regarding their own destinies, whether to be judged as mortals or the elven kind. If they chose to be reckoned as elves, then they would gain the immortality of the Eldar, whereas if they chose to be reckoned as men, they would gain the gift of Ilúvatar, though they would also have a longer lifespan than other men. Eärendil asked Elwing to make their choice, and she chose for them both to be judged among the elves. This same choice would now be offered to every one of their descendants, for they too will be of the half-elven blood. Then the Valar sent the 3 companions of Eärendil back to their homes on another ship, and the Valar took the ship Vinglot, and they hallowed it, and set it into the skies, and it was fair and marvelous, and filled with a wavering flame, pure and bright. And Eärendil the Morinor sat at the helm, glistening with dust of elven gems, and the Silmarillion was bound upon his brow. Far he journeyed in that ship, even into the starless voyages, but most often was he seen at morning or at evening, glimmering in the sunrise or sunset, as he came back to Valinor from voyages beyond the confines of the world. And the ward of Arda saw his ship, and it gave them hope, and they called him Gillisdel, the star of high hope. And Elwing learned the ways of the birds, so that she might fly out to meet him, with wings of white and silver gray. The Valar did not forget their promise, and they came to Middle-earth accompanied by a host of elves. And the battle was hard and long, yet the Valar prevailed. But when all seemed at a loss for the forces of darkness, Morgoth sent forth his most powerful of dragons, in Calagon the Black. It seemed then that even the Valar might be defeated, for Calagon came with great power, and thunder, and lightning, and fire. But Eärendil came, shining with white flame, and there was a battle in the air all the day and through a dark night of doubt. Before the rising of the sun, Eärendil slew and Aragorn the Black. If I could choose a single moment in the Silmarillion to immortalize on film, this will be it. This is epicness personified. Imagine the hosts of the Valar, the very lords of Middle-earth themselves, driven back by the dark, evil, powerful dragon of fire and thunder and lightning. And then Eärendil comes in with his ship, and with him all the birds of heaven. Light defeats darkness, the morning star claims victory over the beast. So like to the victorious battle of Jesus over Satan in Revelation. Jesus, called the morning star, the bright, the blessed, defeats the beast and those associated with it, and quells the darkness. Satan is chained and bound, even as Morgoth was. Light over darkness, hope over despair, love over hatred and bitterness. Eärendil continues as Gillistel, the star of high hope, over the heavens of Middle-earth, continuing to bring hope to all those who dwell on the shores. Perhaps Eärendil's life and his legacy can best be summed up in Galadriel's words to Frodo, as she gives him a phial containing a glimmer of light from the Silmaril bound to Eärendil's brow. May it be a light to you in dark places when all other lights go out. Eärendil is one of my favorite characters in Tolkien's legendarium. His story is one full of hope and light, sorrow and struggle. The beautiful way in which he points us to Christ lends an even deeper aspect to his character. I hope that you have enjoyed taking this journey with me. May we all shine as lights in this dark world, giving hope to others when all other lights go out. Thank you for joining with me today through the Word of Honor. Please like this video, subscribe, share with your friends, and join us again so we can explore more of Middle-earth together. Namadia.